George Russell has been handed a golden opportunity to impress at this weekend's Sakhir Grand Prix after being chosen as a driver to replace Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. With Hamilton being forced out of this weekend's Bahrain Outer Loop race following a positive coronavirus test on Monday, Russell will be stepping up for the Williams team, where he has raced since 2019. Getting his hands on the best car on the Formula 1 grid, Russell will have a fantastic opportunity not only to score his first points of his career, but potentially a first podium and maybe even a win. There are longer term considerations here too, because this weekend will also be about Russell showing his Mercedes bosses that he's worthy of a full-time race seat at the team in the future. A strong showing at the Sakhir Grand Prix will serve simply to leave Mercedes even more convinced about what he can offer when it comes to thinking about the next contracts with its drivers. But with reward comes risk, and joining me today to discuss Russell's opportunities and threats are Autosport's F1 reporter Luke Smith and GP Racing's executive editor Stuart Coddling. So Luke, what job do we think Russell can do this weekend?
Well, John, as you say, it's an enormous opportunity for him, as this is a real chance for him to show Mercedes why he is the heir to Lewis Hamilton at the team, why he can sort of be the driver to lead them forward in the future and take them to future title success whenever Lewis may hang up his helmet. And I think that it's a big ask for any driver stepping into a new car with such short notice and no running beforehand. As much as Russell will be up to speed with 2020 machinery, as much as he sort of is known by the Mercedes team and has worked with them and tested for them in the past, the fact is he's stepping into a car in practice that he's never raced before, he's never driven this specific car before, so it is going to be a big ask. But I think that how he adapts to that challenge, I think that's going to be so decisive for his future. I think it is going to have really, really big ramifications for what happens in the next couple of years when it comes to Mercedes thinking about their driver lineup. And I think it's just an amazing show of faith as well in Russell that Mercedes, they could have turned to someone like Stoffel Van Dorn, who had plenty of experience, who as the reserve driver is so embedded within that team, but they really want to see what George can do, and that's why he was top of their shortlist to be put in for the seat. So I think it's very exciting, but I think it's going to be a really big ask for George Russell. How he adapts to that challenge, I think that's going to be really, really exciting to watch, and it's going to be a huge weekend for him.
Stuart, this call-up's come up virtually at the last second. I know he's had maybe a day of preparation, but is there a danger that stepping into the best car people are going to expect too much too soon?
Well, he's certainly got a certain level of expectation, hasn't he? And we know he's a good driver. He's done incredible things in the Williams. He's certainly outperformed that car. But outperforming a slow car is one thing. Stepping into the best car on the grid and exploiting it to the maximum in the way that Lewis Hamilton does pretty much all the time, and Valtteri Bottas conspicuously doesn't do all the time, is going to be that much trickier. And we have seen George sort of make a few mistakes this year. I mean, most notably, obviously in Imola, he had that off behind the safety car, but also he's had some pretty terrible starts. Certainly last time out in Bahrain, I don't think he could have had a worse start unless he'd engaged reverse gear and gone backwards off the grid. So that's something he needs to kind of really get into the mindset for, because obviously in the Williams he's driving for a team that is limited in resources, certainly until the new owners came in. So over the first lap, you don't really want to get too physical. You don't want to damage the car because you're always striving for points. Whereas when you're driving a Mercedes, what you need with that car, as demonstrated in quite a lot of previous Grand Prix, is you need to convert a good qualifying position into track position straight away, because that car's aerodynamics just aren't really as effective as they could be when racing in traffic. So if he finds himself behind other cars, that will be tricky for him.
Luke, if Russell doesn't manage to kind of match Bottas this weekend and is a bit behind, do you think his reputation will suffer from it? Will it take away some of the shine he's built up with some, good solid performances at Williams?
I don't think so too much. I don't think there's a huge amount for George to lose this weekend, really. I think that if he steps into the car and is able to match Valtteri Bottas from the off, I think that's massive credit to him, and I think that would do his reputation a world of good. I think it would only sort of add to all of the positive hype that's around him. Lewis Hamilton, I asked him a couple of weeks ago what he thought of Russell and his future, and he said he's got the potential to be a future champion. So I think if he can match Bottas from the off, that would go a long way sort of adding to all of that, I guess, that hype that is building. But I think if he doesn't, I think that's kind of not the end of the world, because ultimately Valtteri Bottas has been performing at a pretty high level for this season. He's made mistakes here and there, but he has had a lot of bad luck, and he has been very, very close to Lewis Hamilton, particularly through qualifying. There's been a lot of really, really close sessions between them. So I think that if George isn't on pace with Bottas, I don't think that's too terrible, because ultimately Valtteri's been at that team for 4 seasons. He's been in this car ever since the start of testing, so he basically has everything in his favour, really. So for George, I think Mercedes hopefully will sort of ease the pressure a little bit and say to him, just have fun with it, see what you can do. If he can't come away having pushed Bottas all the way to a race win or anything like that, I don't think that's the end of the world. And I think the main thing is, just as long as he can sort of do a decent performance and hopefully end his F1 point stuck as well, that would be really great to see. But I don't think he can lose too much really in terms of reputation this weekend.
Stuart, is Bottas facing some heat and pressure this weekend?
Well, certainly, because he's got what we'd probably describe as the overspill of the expectation that's been placed on George. Everyone's kind of expecting George Russell to come in and do a job on Valtteri, simply because Valtteri has been a little bit underwhelming of late. He's had all the bad luck in the world, so he might certainly be feeling a little bit of pressure there.
How do you think he will react and treat this challenge that his main rival since he's been racing at Mercedes isn't there? He's no longer up against potentially the greatest driver in F1 for a weekend. How's he going to respond and react?
He's quite a together person, and he's certainly got a poker face. So if he's feeling the pressure, he won't reveal it. If he's rattled, he won't show it. I think that, what version of Bottas are we up to right now? Are we on to 3.1.5? Unless he has a software update coming. I think he'll gather himself. He'll do the best job he can, and what he wants to do is win this race. And I'm sure that if he does, there will be a nice, juicy, and expletive-laden radio message awaiting his sceptics afterwards.
Now, Luke, do you think there's a scenario where both drivers can come out of this weekend with their reputation actually enhanced?
Yeah, I think so. I think that if Valtteri can deliver what is really expected of him, which is a very sort of clean, no fuss, put it on pole, win the race display that we've seen on occasion from him during his time at Mercedes, I think that would go a long way to sort of quelling a lot of the hype that's sort of surrounding George and sort of him being seen as a probable successor and replacement for Bottas potentially for 2022. I think that would sort of be Valtteri's way of saying, look, I'm still here, I'm still performing well, I'm not going to let this seat go for love nor money. I think for George, I think that if he can push Bottas a long way, I think that would be huge for him and probably wouldn't reflect too well on Bottas, because Mercedes might say, well, where's the gap between them? Should that be bigger? But I think if George can come home sort of at a decent P2, for example, if he can beat all of the slower cars, that I think would be a good scenario. I think both could come away happy if Valtteri can win the race quite comfortably, but with George a decent second, I think they'd both be pretty happy with that.
Now, Stuart, George isn't the only one in a new seat this weekend, although he'll probably get 99% of all the attention. We've got Pietro Fittipaldi into the Haas and Jack Aitken at Williams. What can we expect from them?
Yeah, who'd want to be the Haas PR guy this weekend with not one, not two, but 3 driver announcements absolutely steamrolled over by Mercedes? Well, with Jack Aitken, you've got a guy who has been the Williams indentured sim jockey this year. He's also a race winner in Formula 2. So I've got no doubt that he'll be able to step up. Also, there's lower expectations because they're towards the back of the grid. So if he can just show well, not bin the car, bring it home, if it is a chaotic race and they end up in the points, all the better. Pietro Fittipaldi, slightly different scenario there, I think. There's probably a few people, I dare say, commenting below the line right now wondering why he got the nod instead of Louis Delatraz, and I think the decision there has been based on just seat time. He's had more time in the Haas F1 car than Louis Delatraz has recently, even though certainly Pietro, although he has a famous surname, he's the grandson of Emerson Fittipaldi, hasn't really done a great deal of top-level single-seater racing since his sort of arguably high watermark in Formula Renault 3.5, the last year of that particular series. So I suppose for him, it'll be a case of, I would say, mimicking what Valtteri Bottas needs to do this weekend, which is control what you can control. For him, he just needs to keep the car on the island, learn, show the team that he's making progress as a driver, not to bin it early on, and just to do the best job he can. And there's very little expectation on his shoulders because that car is solid back of the grid material. So just a nice, clean race, hopefully within sight of the pack, and I think they'll consider that a job done.
Now, time for you to both put your necks on the line. I want a solid prediction for how you think George is going to do this weekend. Luke?
I will say that he is going to qualify and finish in the top 3. I think that he'll have a hard task to beat Valtteri Bottas. I think Max Verstappen is in very good form at the moment. I think Red Bull showed at Silverstone how well they're sort of able to learn between 2 race weekends. Obviously a little bit of a different layout in Bahrain this weekend. But I think that, I think Max will be difficult to beat. I think if he could beat Max Verstappen, that would be enormous. But I think he will come away not only with his first F1 points, but his first F1 podium, which would be a really, really cool story for George to sort of end his season on.
Damn you, Luke. I was going to say podium
Sorry.
position as well. Yeah, certainly. We've not really touched on the Red Bull side of the equation here, and certainly Red Bull will be looking at this as an opportunity because certainly they were very, very disappointed with the outcome of last weekend's race. They really did think that perhaps they left a win on the table there, or a potential win. So they'll be looking to right that wrong this time out, and they'll see Lewis Hamilton's absence certainly as an opportunity to get Max onto the top step of the podium and cruise into the final race of the year on a high.
I think I'll have to agree with you two as well. I think it'll be a weekend of there'll be some great moments for George. There'll be some frustrations too as well, because I'm pretty sure it'll be very difficult to have a mistake-free weekend when you've been thrown in at that side of the grid. But I think he will come out with his reputation enhanced. How do you think Russell will get on Mercedes this weekend? Is he going to beat Bottas? Could he win the race? Let us know in the comments below. And for the latest on how Russell is progressing and all the other Formula 1 news, follow the latest developments on autosport.com and motorsport.com, and don't forget to hit that like button below.